again, if we're living the gospel, I think that keeps us grounded enough that when you have some differing political views, you can still move forward. We are Saints in the South, your source for gospel growth and good times.
Welcome to another episode of Saints in the South. This is episode 223. 223. We've got myself, Kenny, Rogue Bishop, and Average Joe tonight. Jackson was unable to record this week, so we're going to try to hold down the fort without him. Before we get started, I wanted to mention some viewer comments. We've got some awesome viewers, man. Y'all are great. Week before last, actually, Catherine Wright. Catherine, we thank you. You've got to be one of our most loyal listeners. We appreciate all of your comments. So at Catherine Wright 8205 said, I look forward to seeing you every week. Thank you for sharing your testimonies and insights. And at Dr. I don't know if it's pronounced Dr. Suez or Dr. Suez, Dr. Suezz said, this is my favorite channel. I'm always waiting anxiously for all of you to share. 3 hearts. God bless each of you.
Oh,
awesome?
Thank you.
That's Suezz.
Yep.
I wonder if that's
Would
a
that be
take off Dr. Seuss. Is it a take off Dr. Seuss maybe? But
that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it's maybe you can correct us on this.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the comment.
Dr.
Stop Suez, messing up my name.
Dr. Suez, Dr.
I think it's a nod to Dirty Dancing. It's Swayze.
Yes, I don't think there's an E after the Z. It just sways.
Sways.
But there's 2 Z's, so it's Sways Z.
Sways Z. Oh, there you go. Hey, it could be.
Way to go, Joe. Way to go, Joe.
Yeah, nobody puts doctor in the corner.
That's right.
Nobody puts baby in the corner.
That's right. All right. So, this week we are in the book of Mosiah, chapter 29, and the book of Alma, chapters 1 through 4. And the title is They Were Steadfast and Immovable. And Michael's going to kick us off with the introduction.
So the intro says, some might see King Mosiah's proposal to replace kings with elected judges as merely wise political reform. But to the Nephites, especially those who lived under wicked King Noah, this change had spiritual significance too. They had seen how an unrighteous king had influenced his people, and they were exceedingly anxious to be free from such influence. This change would allow them to be responsible for their own righteousness and answer for their own sins. Of course, the end of the reign of kings did not mean the end of problems in Nephite society. Cunning people like Nehor and Amlici promoted false ideas, nonbelievers persecuted the saints, and many members of the church became prideful and fell away. Yet the humble followers of God remained steadfast and immovable despite what happened around them.
All right. So where we want to kick off our discussion this week?
The reign of the judges.
Mm.
Leo Scalzo, I can't remember what book that he wrote that he talked about this, but he said, he made a comment, it's about 20 years ago, I think is when I read that the political system that King Mosiah set up with the reign of the judges and the whole judges thing and everything was just probably the best government that we could have possibly had. He just went on and on and on about how incredible it really was. And a lot of it, Kenny and I were talking about this earlier, a lot of it mirrors our own Constitution, especially the original Constitution with the original 10 amendments. But it's kind of cool how it was set up because, the lower judges did not have the right to put someone to death. That could only happen to the higher judge. Only the higher judge could do that. But if for some reason the higher judge was judging unrighteously, then if there was a unanimous rule amongst the lower judges, they could overrule what the higher judge said. It's
that's
really
cool. That's
really
a genius
cool.
system.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately,
Checks and balances.
yeah. Unfortunately, just like the Constitution of the United States, this system of judges was based on a moral, God-loving society. If it's not a moral society or a God-loving society, it won't work. It can't work. Just like the Constitution is based on a God-fearing, moral society.
That's right. So yeah, I'm gonna pull out my quote now. John Adams.
no.
Oh yeah,
Oh no, Joe!
Here it comes.
it's probably the same one I was thinking.
Our Constitution was made only for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to the government of any other. And that's exactly the situation with the people here. King Mosiah set up this system that was as close to perfect as you could probably get as far as governance. Beautiful genius systems of checks and balances within the judges, with the, like you said, the lower courts being able to even overrule the higher courts if there was unanimous decisions. But like we just said too, it was based on the majority of the people being righteous. And I think he was expecting that normally the people that were he knew there was going to be corruption, but I think he was probably counting on the corruption being in the minority, because once the corruption became the majority, then that's when things started to fall apart.
Yeah.
Just as in our day.
Well, so the trick is you cannot legislate morality. That's the issue. So you can't create a law. You can't create enough laws to make a bad people righteous. And it's a tricky thing. Like the funny thing is you feel the natural impulse is to create more laws or create more structure and force to try to make bad people be good. But the people that don't follow laws are the bad people. So you're kind of like chasing your tail here, like, like, stop being bad. I'm going to make another rule. But like, I don't follow rules anyway. What does that matter to me? Like,
it's like making a law, to help us do something and expecting the criminals to follow the new law. I mean, the reason they're criminals is because they don't abide the law. I mean, a new law is not going to, you know what? I was going to do that, but now I'm not because, there's a new law. That doesn't happen.
Right. And a lot of times these really terrible, heinous acts that we see are, they broke 20 laws in the process. And so we need another law. And you go, okay, the 21, that's going to be.
So that they can break 21.
Yeah. That's going to be the magic number. Yeah. One more law. Right. That'll do it.
Yeah.
Exactly. So.
Yeah. And so it just, to me, it's imperative, it talked a lot about in the lesson, the importance of us as saints, as believers in God, whatever religion you are, believers in God, believers in Jesus Christ, believers in a God, whatever religion it may be, that we vote, that we exercise, our right to vote, so that we're voting there, and therein, to me, that's what I really started to think about that, because therein lies the key, right? Is right there. Because if your voting system is corrupt or easily corruptible, then it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what your vote is or what you're voting for, because it's not tallied correctly, right? Yeah. So how important it is that we have accurate, honest tallying systems when it comes to our votes.
Absolutely.
I think it's interesting too, like in our situation, in our country, with the Electoral College and the representation. So many things are not a direct democracy or not a direct vote, and there's efforts to make changes there and things. And when I was younger, I thought that would make sense. The internet was relatively new when I was younger, and I was like, man, you've got this wonderful thing called an internet. You should be able to just do a direct democracy and just let everybody vote for whatever they want. And then as I've aged and read a little bit more and studied a little bit more, you start to realize that typically does not end up well at all.
Yeah.
Which is why we have a republic,
correct,
not a democracy.
That's right.
Yeah, that's the thing. A lot of people get that wrong. They say, "Oh, well, we live in a democracy." We live in a democratic republic,
right?
And that was designed to protect us from the tyranny of the majority.
Yes, or the mob rule.
Yeah, exactly. Because a true democracy would be 8 wolves and 1 sheep voting on what to have for dinner.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. That's really good. And in one of his books, Ezra Taft Benson, but before he became president of the church, talked about democracy. And he says, democracy works really well, except for the guy at the end of the rope, because there's no fair trial, right? It's just mob rules, and this is what we think you're guilty, and there's no trial, and that's why Republic was set up the way it is, so that truly, if it works correctly, and we're in a moral society, justice will prevail. And we see over and over again how that's not really happening so much anymore. But I just think it's amazing because it talked about Nehor, and he was, wanting to do it. It's just, aren't we all just a bunch of sheep sometimes? I mean, just when the Lord described us as sheep, I mean, that's also, it's a compliment. At the same time, it's not a compliment, You just a bunch of blind sheep, because I don't understand that people that just want more laws and rules, and they want to be controlled. And as long as I'm safe, you can tell me what to do, just keep me safe. And I'm like, who wants to live like that? I don't remember voting for that when we wanted to come to earth, right? We didn't want someone to make us do what's right. We didn't want someone to make us do what's wrong. We wanted, and Father wanted us to have agency, right? And then we get to earth, and there's so many people that don't want agency anymore. They want safety, quote unquote. They want to be taken care of. And it's amazing to me, though, the way that Nehor worked that. He started working his magic and pacifying and getting onto the sensual and carnal side of people by saying, it's okay. It doesn't really matter if you're good or bad. It's going to be fine. Right. We're all good. Just, you heard the phrase, lie a little, cheat a little. In the end, we'll just get a few stripes. It'll all be good.
What you were saying a minute ago, I want to touch on that. Reminded me of the quote. I looked it up. It was Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Those who give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety."
Man, you're coming up with those quotes today, Kenny.
That's right.
I know, Kenny, you're stealing my job.
I'm going to start whipping out the dad jokes here in a minute if you don't tighten up, Joe.
No, hey, would you say that again, Kenny? That was really good.
Yeah, he said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety."
Now, who was that?
Benjamin Franklin.
Franklin. Jefferson has one somewhat similar to that, talking about peaceful safety versus dangerous liberty or freedom, and he would prefer the latter.
Liberty is not safety. That's the thing, that people want to have it all, and you can't. You cannot have safety and liberty. Liberty by itself, the very nature of liberty is it puts you in a precarious situation, because when you have the freedom to make your own choices and to craft your own life, you also have the responsibility for your own life. With freedom comes responsibility, and that's something that a lot of people don't seem to understand.
Well, the other thing, Kenny, they don't understand is that there's no such thing as safety either. If you have all these rules and people forcing you to do according to what they think you should do, and you step out of line, you're dead, you're jailed, whatever, right? There's no safety in there either. Now you're living in fear. There's no such thing.
Well, you have the safety the way that cattle or have safety on a ranch. You know, the cattle
killed.
have safety; they're protected
Until it's time to eat.
Until it's time for slaughter. Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing that I was going to talk about Nehor was that, you know, everything's fine. You know, like, okay, so as a people, I've found in my years on life so far on the earth here that as a people, we tend to be fine as long as everybody agrees with us, right?
Yeah.
If people don't agree with us, then we have to watch ourselves, because we could be quick to get angry and quick to be upset, and, you know, quick to want to fight or whatever. Contention.
Yep. It's human nature.
The thing though that I found is there's certain groups of people that want everything to be like, hey, you know, we need equal time, equal this, equal that, make everything equal, and everything needs to be fine until that gets to a certain point, and then they don't want equal anymore. They want more. Now they want to tell everyone else what to do, and don't disagree with me, and my way is the right way. You know, it's funny because there's no group of people that really get to that point where they want equality all the time. They get to the point where no, they want you to do what they want you to do, and they want you to think the way they think. And so we really have to be careful. And that's what was happening with Nehor here, is he got to the point where he thought, well, you know, I'll contend with Gideon, and I'll show everybody, and I'll prove everybody how cool and how smart I am. And he was losing the great debate with Gideon. And so what did he do?
Sword
he took out
time.
his sword and he killed him. He killed. Well, I can't. So I'm not, you know, and he's an old man, right? So, well, I can't beat him, so I might as well kill him. And it's just, sometimes you see those parallels in our society today where, you know, it gets to the point where they get, groups of people get so frustrated that you know, we're not, you know, that other people aren't agreeing with them or whatever, and so they turn to violence. You know, the Constitution was never set up to protect violence. It was set up to protect your right to protest, but not violently.
Your right to throw a punch
ends up the next person's nose. Yeah.
I think that was my dad that said that.
Pops, thanks, Pops.
Yeah, my dad, he would always he would explain what agency was to me. He says, your agency ends right before your fist touches my face.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I didn't have any idea what he's talking about until I got
So that's
older.
where all the face punching metaphors come from? Was that
yes,
from your wise father?
Yes.
Awesome.
My wise father.
That's right.
And what you were saying a minute ago too reminded me. I think Joe pulled this quote out last week. Evil preaches
that's what I was just going to say.
Yeah. And
say
then
it again.
tries to silence good. Yeah, it's true.
Say it again.
That evil preaches tolerance until it is dominant. Then it tries to silence good.
I know, right? I see that happening. Our society has seen that happen. Our earth, all of the governments that have come and gone, we've seen that happen over and over. We're seeing it happen right now. It's just, it's frustrating.
Here's another quote from Lao Tzu: care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner. Yeah. So that's kind of what you were saying earlier, is we sometimes want to bend to other people's wishes, or kind of, okay, well, I got to give them free the same amount of time, the equal amount of time, even if it's a terrible idea, or, you know, allowing a certain amount of violence or something like that. And that's not the case. I was trying to remember, there was a book I read not too long ago, and one of the bold claims, it's crazy that you have to say it's a bold claim now, but they said not all cultures are created equal.
Yeah.
They said there are some cultures that are just unacceptable, or some behaviors of cultures that are unacceptable. Some beliefs are unacceptable. And the example they gave was of a headhunter tribe. And that was how this tribe, that's how they operated, that's how they gained social credit, was to to go out and murder the people around them, the other people, their neighbors, right? And they would collect their heads, and that was how they gained status in their society. And he was like, that's not acceptable. That's not going to work. And it's okay for other cultures to say, no, your culture is not going to be allowed to do that anymore, because it's harming other people.
Yeah. And there are countries that do that. And we as a nation don't really seem to have the wisdom or the fortitude to be able to take that stand. And we kind of lost sight of the need in our culture today for everybody to be on the same page morally. You know, we can have different beliefs. We can all, and that was one of the most brilliant parts of this country's founding is religious freedom. So we can believe different things, but like you were just saying, we have to have some kind of uniting morality. We have to be on the same page somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And when that erodes, is just like we saw in our lesson for this week. Yeah. With, Mosiah set up this absolutely genius system of government with the judges and the different court and there, all the checks and balances. And when the people became corrupt, it fell apart.
Mm-hmm. When evil started sneaking in and judges started, the lower judges started putting people to death, which they weren't allowed to do. And
which we've seen our own courts overstepping their boundaries a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about that earlier. Like 20 years ago, there was several instances of that where there was cases where the, federal Supreme Court and state Supreme Courts were basically legislating. They were passing laws, and they don't have the right to do
authority.
That. No, they do not have that authority, but yet they were doing it. They were saying this is what law needs to be, and this is how it's going to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, that brings up an interesting question. How do you arrest it? How do you reverse it? How do you say, well, things are slipping here? We have these lower judges now having people executed. We have these different things going on in this scenario, but in our own scenario, I asked the same question. How do you reverse it in that? It seems to me, looking from the outside in,
I could tell you right now.
Well, it's accountability, right?
The only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing.
Holy shnikes, what just happened?
Holy cow, it's Jackson.
No way.
He's going to be able to make it tonight.
It's a good man doing something.
Just sat down.
Right.
That's someone that actually did something and just didn't stand
That's right.
by.
That was a perfect time in the quote, man. I was just saying the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. And then we have a good man popping in doing something right here.
But I guess my question is, what's the something? Because what I see is we have elected officials doing things that are illegal. Everyone knows it is illegal, but there's no accountability. There's no punishment. There's no I don't know. There's no corrective action. And so we have good men. I know a few of them. 3 of them are right here, right now. So what do you do? What
I was about to say, you mean Michael, Jackson, and Joe. Those are the 3.
I think we all think the same thing. But I mean, you know what I mean? Because it seems like they're untouchable. It seems like there's a 2-tier justice system.
Mm-hmm.
There's more and more. There's a 2-tier everything.
Mm-hmm.
There's 2-tier medical system. There's 2-tier legal system. There's 2-tier everything. So how do you start holding these people accountable?
Kind of like what I mentioned last week. I think you gotta not ignore the little things.
Turn the music up.
Yeah, that's right. Turn the music up. That's right. Or do something. It's one of those things where you give an inch, they take a mile.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
That's what's happened.
Yeah.
I think maybe one of the thoughts that comes to my mind is if you make it, if you connect the dots, if we could connect the dots and make it easy for the people to follow that thread, follow that chain of who is responsible, who is accountable, right? So that's part of it. I think right now there's too much disconnect. They say, well, this person did this bad thing, but then you don't know, how do I connect with that person? How do I say, you should not have done that bad thing. You should leave office. You should resign. You should whatever. How do you get there? How do you connect those dots? And I think if we had an easier way to say, you people here, reach out to this person who is your representative and tell them, if you do not take action or sign on or speak out, then we will hold you accountable. And then that person in turn, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have the masses connected to the accountability chains and start pulling on them and saying, you are my local guy, or you're my regional, my district woman. And if you don't speak up on my behalf, and if you have 10,000 people saying that at the same time, then you force them to act, and then they force their person to act until
I
the
think you're onto
person that did the thing.
Because it would have to happen within the party, because that's where the problem lies currently. Is everything is so polarized politically that nobody is going to hold a member of their own political party accountable, but everybody wants to attack the opposing party.
Right. So that the foundation behind that thought is from George Washington, a quote from him that says, "The great mass of our citizens require only to understand matters rightly to form right decisions." So I think if you can empower the masses to say, this is the problem and here is the solution. If you agree with me, take this action. And then you mobilize the masses.
Sounds a lot like Joseph Smith. Teach the people correct principles and let them govern themselves.
Right.
Well, it makes me think, well, of course. I mean, why else would be trying to dummy down America and dummy down the education system and try to keep everybody stupid and pay them off or take care of them, because then you can get away with what you want to get away with. You know, why not take over the electorals, the voting, and make sure that you know, that we're in charge of how the votes are counted, because then we can put the person in that we want to put the person in, or we can make sure that the person doesn't get in, and then we can go over, you know, we can go after whoever we want to, you know. It gets to the point where you're like Jackson was saying, I think, and like where Joe was starting out is, how did it even get to this point? How did we let it get to this point? And I think a lot of it started with our sincere desire to be tolerant, to try to, I think we thought that if we could be more like Jesus and be tolerant of other people's beliefs and the way they think, and give them equal time, and et cetera, then we're being better people. But then the problem happened was, that's not what they wanted. The people that we gave the equal time to never wanted equal time. They wanted to dominate, just like Nehor. You know, he wanted everyone to believe what he was thinking, and if you didn't, he was going to kill you. Right? So they may not kill us today, or they may, but maybe they'll kill us financially. Maybe they'll kill us with our reputation. And you get people to the point where they're afraid to stand up for anything that they believe, because they'll get chastised and torn down. It could affect the business that they own. It could affect the employment that they're at. You get to the point where people are fearful of standing up of what they feel is right or wrong. And then they don't do anything. And so I'm not here to point my finger at those people and say, well, you should do something anyway. I actually understand why they get to that point. But as a society, why did we do that? And like Joe was saying, how do we take it back? Because we've come so far, and there's so many filters now and so many levels. How do you take it back? And I think one of the first things is you have to fix the voting, the count of the votes. You have to make sure that is infallible, and that we don't get more votes in by mail than we sent out. Yeah. Because unless the vote is actually counted correctly, our vote will not change things, and we cannot vote out corrupt, bad people.
Yep. A lot of the country has lost faith in our electoral system because of all the corruption that we've seen in recent years.
Well, virtually the whole country has. Half of them did this past election, and the other half the election before that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pretty much 100%.
Yeah. So you ever wonder about how we're going to be remembered in history books? Like the great poet Neil Peart wrote in A Farewell to Kings, when they turn the pages of history, when these days have passed long ago, will they read of us with sadness for the seeds that we let grow?
You are just full of quotes, Kenny, and I like them all.
Yeah. I wondered 1,000 years from now, how are we? What are the history books going to say about us right now?
About me, probably not much.
They'll say, "Well, Joe, he was pretty average."
That's right. Exactly. That's what I'm aiming for.
You're doing a good job. You're nailing it.
What were you going to say,
Michael,
Jackson?
I was just going to say, I think we also have gotten lost and focused more on the federal level, and we have forgotten about our local, the local impact that we can have. And I think that's where you really have to have and implement any kind of change and direction. Is you have to be involved locally. If we're not involved locally, then there's really not much that we're going to be able to do. And every community has to face that and do that. So
that's right. Jackson has put his money where his mouth is, and you actually ran for school board a few years ago.
I did run for school board. I did get beat, and I think I will run again. I just haven't done that again since. Yeah, it's been 2 or 3 years. It was anyway. Yep.
Yeah.
I ran once. It was a 5K.
Will you ever do it again?
I might. Depends on what's chasing me.
Exactly.
No,
if you see me running, you better watch out for whatever's behind me, because
yeah,
I don't run.
That's it. Michael brings up a good point with the voting and stuff like that. If there's no reliability there, I guess, if there's no quality there, if there's no belief that it's working, that's a problem. And in a previous time, I created a database for NASA, because they had a space center that had about $300,000 a month power bill with, I can't remember, 200 buildings, multiple vendors. And they had an old database that was specifically for divvying up that power bill. And the problem was they had cobbled onto it and expanded it and changed it and stuff so much. They built new buildings and they split other buildings. They added some different equipment that drew power differently. And so they had lost reliability because they would have this power bill and they would say to the U.S. Navy, "Oh, your bill this month is $50,000." And they'd say, "What? We didn't use any more power than last month, and last month it was $30,000. I mean, that's $20,000 discrepancy in 1 month. Can you rerun it?" And they'd rerun it, and it would come out and say, "Actually, you owe $60,000." They'd say, "What?" They said, "Run it again. Oh, you owe $40,000." What? And so that consequently, they started reaching out and saying, "We need help fixing this." And ultimately, the old one was just tossed out. And so if you don't have that reliability, if you don't have that faith in the system, it's going to get tossed. And you just got to hope that something fixes it, or something more true to the intent of the original purpose is created to fill that void. So. Oh, and one other thing, another George Washington quote. As far as what we can do, I totally agree with you. I think it's coming together for me, because I think my original thought is you got to have a pathway for the people, the masses, to be able to tie the problem, or a person who's no longer who should no longer be in that position. You got to tie that together, the people with a consequence or accountability, right? you got to have reliability in the voting, because the voice of the people, if it's filtered through something or changed in some way, then you can't affect that change. You can't hold people accountable. But then the third thing is the younger generation. It's another quote from George Washington, who said, "A primary object should be the education of our youth in the science of government. In a republic, what species of knowledge can be equally important? And what duty more pressing than communicating it to those who are to be the future guardians of the liberties of the country?" And I think you had already mentioned that's part of the problem, is we've kind of been dumbed down, and ever more so with social media and just entertainment is the way I put it. I think that's, I've harped on this a few times. Here's my soapbox, is that I think life has become so busy with distractions, and we've got this idea that a big purpose of life is to be entertained.
Yeah.
And I think that in and of itself is a huge foundational issue with our society, is that we don't have time to reflect, to ponder, to think about the deeper things, to think about governance and accountability and those things, because we're too busy being distracted, whether that's through entertainment or whether that's through just the rat race of life these days.
That's right.
I'll be quiet now.
Deep thoughts.
Yeah, bread and
Never
circuses.
show.
So what was it that got you on this part of the conversation?
You
Come
appeared.
follow me. Sorry, Jackson. You opened the door. I walked right
Yeah. What part of the come follow me?
I think it
Nehor.
was Nehor, and then just the changes in the judges becoming corrupt and
Right.
Well, and the start of the judges, the stopping of the rule by kings and then the rule by judges, and what a great, incredible system that was, and then how it slowly became corrupted, because the whole premise, I believe, with all the quotes that Kenny and Joe were throwing out there, they're competing with quotes today, was...
I have a quote about that.
Oh, shoot. Joe's above Kenny.
On that.
Gosh dang, I don't even remember what I was going to say.
Well, so did
that based on the Constitution of the United States today was the same thing as the judges setting up that rule of government, that it's based on a moral, God-loving society. And if the society isn't moral, and if it's not God-fearing, then it's not going to work. That type of government will not work.
So was it brought up about the judge overseeing Trump's trial and how he told the jurors that they didn't have to, they didn't all have to agree
Jackson.
on which one?
Nope. We didn't even go there. We didn't even go there till just now.
Yeah, man. Talk about corrupt judges. But anyway.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see where that one comes out. But it is true, though. I mean, you got to have a moral compass, a moral society in order for the rule of law and for the Constitution and everything to serve its purpose.
Joe was making the point that just because we pass another law doesn't mean that the criminal who doesn't obey the laws in the first place is now going to all of a sudden obey that one.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's the biggest.
But
there is.
We're my son's kind of going through some stuff right now, and my view, which could be tainted, could be wrong, I'll admit, but my view is what a corrupt judge that he's dealing with. But he was saying, asking his attorney, and trying to do some research. What can I do? What are the steps that can be taken to try to get rid of this judge, or to try to bring something to someone so that he can either get put out or get debarred, because you're an attorney. So,
right.
I'm not even using the right lingo. I apologize. But the point is that he was trying to figure out what are our legal steps that we can take when we have a corrupt judge, or a judge that we feel is corrupt? What are the things that we can do so that that judge isn't protected and just sits there for years and years and years and years, continuing to rule in a way or a fashion that we don't think is moral? What do you do? So anyway, he hasn't found the answer yet. But it goes along with what you guys were talking about.
They can the group the if I'm not mistaken, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but I think you can recall a judge by popular vote. And there can be a essentially like enough signatures to put it on a ballot to say should we recall this judge, and then if enough people vote for it, I think that's that. Now disbarment, I think, is a whole other deal. I think you have to essentially accuse them of something that's outside of their ethical guidelines from the lawyer rule book or whatever it is, and then if it's essentially I think a kind of a trial with that to say did they act in error ethically, and if so, then they could potentially lose their license to practice law. But I don't know. It's kind of a messed up. What'd you say, Judge Judy?
No, I said this judge should.
Oh, I thought you said I misjudged Judy, and I'm like, she was pretty straight. She called balls and strikes pretty good. So,
she does.
Yeah.
She does.
But yeah, that's the thing, and that's the same challenge that perfectly describes the situation I see that we're kind of in, is that there's corruption or just I don't know. There's problems, right? But the solutions are not very readily available. Like part of it is the incumbency rate, right? We as an American people, if you look at polls, we're very unhappy with our legislature. We're very unhappy with some of these judges and stuff, but yet they remain. They stay in office. Every time you have an election, they stay in office. It's almost a perfect inverse. I think the approval rating is less than 20%, but the incumbency rate is well over 80%. So
which tells me, I'm not the smartest guy out there by any means, but it tells me then the way we count votes isn't right. Something's messed up. Because if you really have that many people that aren't happy, they're not going to vote them back in.
I wouldn't think.
Just saying.
Unless they are, a lot of people, if they're faced with the option of
the devil versus the devil you don't know.
Yeah, or the opposing party. They would rather vote if you have somebody who is corrupt and they're horrible, but they're the party that you vote for. You would rather a lot of people would rather vote for that person than to vote for somebody from the opposing party, even if they know the individual
tribalism
and dishonest and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about things that are relevant to our time. Something else a little thing that stood out to me in chapter 3. We're seeing like biblical prophecy playing out, and it's been interesting to me how when people do things, I'm like, do they realize that what they're doing is actually fulfilling prophecy?
Right.
And this is what was happening. This is really interesting here in Alma 3 verses 13 and 14 says, "Now we will return again to the Amlicites, for they also had a mark set upon them. Yea, they set the mark upon themselves, yea, even a mark of red upon their foreheads. Thus the word of God is fulfilled. For these are the words which he said to Nephi, Behold, the Lamanites have I cursed, and I will set a mark on them, that they and their seed may be separated from thee and thy seed." And jump down to verse 18. "Now the Amlicites knew not that they were fulfilling the words of God when they began to mark themselves in their foreheads. Nevertheless, they had come out in open rebellion against God." So I thought that was really interesting that they were literally fulfilling prophecy and just didn't even realize it.
One of the biggest ones that I see coming to pass is the amount of people that are aligning against the children of Israel, the Jews, right?
Bingo.
Just how many people are just stacking the lines against them. It's crazy.
Yep.
Well, the prophecy is the whole world will be against them.
That's right. And
before right before Christ comes,
and that's what we're seeing.
I mean, more than ever. We were down in Orlando a couple of months ago.
That's so weird.
Yeah. And we saw several cars go by, and they're honking, and they've got their Palestinian flags and stuff out there, just waving, anyway. Again, it was one of those situations, one of those radio moments or speaker moments. I'm like, I can't just sit here and just watch it go by. Mm-hmm. So as they went by, I stuck my hand out and I did thumbs down like that to them. And of course they flipped me off and stuff. So
yeah, of course they did. Yeah. Why wouldn't they? Right?
Yeah.
Because you didn't agree with them.
Right.
You mean they gave you half of a peace sign?
Yeah. Right. You've got people that are advocating for genocide, and you can't expect them to be nice.
Right.
These aren't going to be polite people. These aren't going to be reasonable people. None of them are.
Yeah, but let's find out how would they like to be, killed and wiped out? Well, let's just, genocide them. Then now all of a sudden they're going to be, oh no, well that's not right.
Yeah, exactly.
I saw a video a couple of days ago where a guy standing out, he's holding a sign that is anti-abortion. Mm-hmm. And this lady, she's got her daughter with her, and she just loses her mind and just starts attacking the guy.
Yeah.
I mean,
hitting at him, throwing a shake on him.
Yeah, exactly. So hey, it's impossible. The reason it's impossible for them to have a conversation is because their reasoning is easily defeatable.
Mm-hmm. And so they refuse to have a conversation. They would rather just yell and scream and fight and kick. And what did you guys think about Alma the Younger's decision to step down as chief judge? When I read that,
term limits.
This is weird because it brought up all kinds of emotions again from when I was a kid and read that for the very first time. When I read that for the very first time in the Book of Mormon, my initial response was, no, don't do it. No. Don't do it. I was so sad because in my mind, even as a child, I was thinking, man, this whole thing is going to go to pot. This is not going to be good. This is not going to, but all of his reasons were right. Everything that he quoted was right, that the testimony has more power than a sword, and that he knew that that's what he needed to do. But it's amazing because even as he was trying to do that, and the people he was trying to actually convert or bring back to Christ would say, well, you're not the chief judge anymore. I don't have to listen to you. So get out of here. Right. So, I mean, just, it's like,
you're not the boss of me.
You're not the boss of me. What are you guys' thoughts?
Yeah.
I mean, Alma was a righteous dude. I mean, he was willing to give up power in exchange for focusing on what was really important. The things that really, the spiritual things. He was focused more on. That seems like the spiritual things than the power that goes along with the office that he held politically or legally.
And that's a tough spot because his influence, he obviously has a moral compass, the principles, to judge righteously, to lead righteously. And so you vacate that seat, you open it up, and you're hoping
the next guy,
hoping the next guy will do his part in following that same that same path. And we see that many times it is hard for someone to do that. And I think that's why we are encouraged to be involved in our local community so much. Naturally, we as Latter-day Saints, if we're living the gospel, we have a pretty good moral compass, some pretty good principles live by and follow. Yes, those vary, somewhat. There are Democrats, there are Republicans, and there are Libertarians. There are independents, all within the church, all within the Restored Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints. But at the same time, we have again, if we're living the gospel, I think that keeps us grounded enough that when you have some differing political views, you can still move forward, hopefully. So
think what a blessing it is too to have Latter-day Saints in these various parties, I mean, in our country, but also in other places around the world and stuff. To if you think about it, to where if it's working right, then those saints are helping each of these parties move closer toward God's standards, right? So it leads the Republicans more towards God's standards, and the Democrats more towards God's standards, and the independents and libertarians more towards God's standards. And I think that's a beautiful blessing, rather than them all being lumped up into one categorical tribe that no one listens to. They're kind of spread out and can each have influence on their individual differences in parties and things to try to guide and influence them what we like to call the right way. I was just going to say, if you ever get the chance to read Democracy in America by Alexis de Tocqueville, it is insightful and it is shameful. It is shameful what has happened to our educational system. So reading through it, it's one of those books that it's almost like learning the language, right? I mean, you do this a bit with the scriptures and stuff, with the kind of the Old English or High English or however you want to describe it. But you kind of get used to you get used to the these and the thous and those things. Well, Democracy in America is very much that way. It's just on a higher plane, and it's one of those things that I've got to be in it to be able to get anything out of it. But it's so rich, and it's a great assessment of how this country was set up, the intentions of it, the people of it that made it possible, and it's great insight. But I was going to read some quotes, but I'm looking back at it and I'm going, man, they're so wordy and just deep. It's a bit much, so I'll forbear.
Have you read The 5,000-Year Leap, Cleon Skousen?
Yes, that we were talking about.
Is that the one you were?
That's the book.
Earlier?
Yes, thank you. So that was the book. I was trying to remember what the title of that was. Yeah,
that one's phenomenal.
All right.
And
what did you say? 5,000-year leap.
5,000-year leap. And
I'll have to check that out.
Ezra Taft Benson wrote one called. Oh my goodness, I can't remember. Yeah,
there it is.
Ezra Taft Benson wrote one as well that was phenomenal. An enemy hath done this, where it talks about the division in America, and because he was what was his role? Something
he was
in
agriculture secretary
of agriculture. Yeah. So he was in the thick of it, and talked about one time when he got accused of being too American. Well, you're too American.
Yeah.
So that's like telling someone where you're too Jesus centered.
Yeah.
You're
right.
too churchy.
You're too ethical.
Yeah, you're too ethical. I mean, anyway, that's a really good read as well.
Joe, knowing the intellectual that you are, you would eat this book up right here. This 5,000-year leap.
Me?
Crazy. Yeah. Hey,
I'll borrow it. I mean, if you loan it out.
It's a good one. Says Jefferson said they strongly believed that the best citizens should accept major roles in public life. They believe people with talent and demonstrated qualities of leadership should have the same sense of duty as that which Washington exhibited when he allowed himself to be called out of retirement 3 separate times to serve the country.
Yep.
And here we go. He felt one of the greatest threats to the new government would be the day when the best qualified people refused to undertake the tedious, arduous, and sometimes unpleasant task of filling important public offices.
Yep.
And that's that we've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
That's part of what the de Tocqueville quote I was looking at gets into, is talking about the despotism of majority, when the people that you've trusted, that were qualified, and they're the people that the masses unite behind, because they say, well, you know what, I might think this way, but I trust your judgment more than my own on these matters. And if we move away from that to where it's just, well, everyone's opinion is the same opinion. I mean, everybody's opinion should count the same, regardless of experience and of being a high intellect, of being whatever, you know what I'm saying? If we get away from that and everyone's opinion just counts the same, then you have this tyranny of majority, and that can be just as despotic as a terrible king, as what de Tocqueville was saying in this quote. But anyway, yeah, I'll borrow that book from you.
Truth.
Very good. Yep.
All right, cool. Sounds like a good place to wrap it up. We're about out of time anyway.
Sounds good. Well, we've got a Facebook group out there, Saints in the South. Kenny works tirelessly at trying to get people engaged and involved in everything. He puts things out there, and we try and do the same. But if you haven't ever checked that group out, it's free to join that group, and please chime in, whether you hear something on the show and want to comment on, throw it out there, or Kenny's got a weekly wins session that he puts out there as well, where we just kind of chime in some positivity. You know, where are we succeeding in life during the week? So hope all of you will.
It's all about
check that out.
Yes, Saints in the South podcast group on Facebook.
Yep, very good.
Yep. Get in on the discussion.
Well, until next time, y'all keep on striving. All right.